The only thing we should be wearing as humans are purely natural materials.
It's cotton,
Wool,
softer
linen,
and gentler
silk,
on your
cotton.
skin.
Much more breathable than the synthetic materials you're used to wearing.
A natural fabric that supports farmers and communities.
3 reasons why you should avoid buying clothing that's made with polyester.
The body actually vibrates at 100 hertz. Polyester is a measly 15.
You won't nap well if your sheets or your nightwear is made out of any of these.
You will also start smelling insanely fast after like 2 minutes of wearing something with this fabric.
The clothes you're wearing right now are low-key killing you.
Are you Team Cotton?
Hey honey, take a walk on the wild side.
Team Polyester. Let's talk about it. Is it as black and white? Is it as good and bad as often portrayed on social media? So, polyester is a synthetic fabric made from petroleum-based fibers.
To be clear, petroleum as in derived from oil. So as you may know, these are plastic-based fibers.
Primarily derived from polyethylene terephthalate. And to be honest, this was actually new to me too, but polyethylene terephthalate, the more attentive viewer might have seen it, PET, the exact same material as the plastic bottles we're drinking from. The word plastic comes from the Greek word plastikos.
Derived from plasso, which means I form or move. Quite literally, what's happening when these fabrics are being produced?
Imagine combining ingredients like a chef. Only these ingredients are ethylene glycol and terephthalic acid.
When these chemicals are heated together in this process, it creates polymer.
A syrupy substance is created, and when this is cooled down and chopped up, you have these plastic chips. Then the chips are heated again and put into the pasta machine, creating a rough fiber that's still being stretched out and manipulated further to make it more suitable for spinning yarns.
What's truly fascinating is how these fibers are then woven or knitted into the fabrics we use every day, from clothing to curtains.
That, in short, is the process of making polyester from scratch. Nowadays, you have a lot of recycled polyester as well.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because recycled polyester, as opposed to what one might think, is not made of old polyester clothing. Instead, it's made of old PET bottles.
Beautiful.
Or is it? Later in the video, we'll get into why this is one of the biggest scams of today's fashion industry. I wasn't even talking about this worker doing his job without shoes.
No.
I'm just literally losing a foot looking at it. Where polyester is a man-made material that only was invented in the 1940s, archaeologists have discovered pieces of cotton cloth that are 7,000 years old. And although the process might seem a little more straightforward because the fibers are literally already hanging on the plant,
this harvesting machine, called a cotton picker, plucks fluffy seed cotton out of the plant's boll.
it actually takes a surprisingly lot of machines to get the sticks out and the seeds so that only the clean fluff will remain that is ready to be spun into yarns and knitted or woven into fabrics.
No.
Are you kidding me? Just stick your hand into the machine to anyway. Anyway, these are the fibers that are ready to be spun into yarn. And although it is possible to turn old cotton clothing into new fabric, there are a lot of ifs and buts. But first, let's talk about quality, baby.
Probably necessary to first look at the word quality.
Dictionary definition of the word quality.
1. Degree of excellence. The standard of something as measured against other things of a similar kind.
Polyester is a synthetic fabric and also has way less quality.
2. A distinctive attribute or characteristic, an inherent feature of something or someone.
Polyester is loved because it's durable, resistant to shrinking and stretching, and it dries super quick.
Often online, quality is only discussed in terms of the first definition, degree of excellence. And you can imagine that this is not only quite subjective, but fabrics and garments also really quickly get reduced to being good or bad quality.
How do I know what quality actually is? You want to look for this in the tag, polyester.
It just really doesn't make sense to base your entire judgment of quality on the raw materials something is made from. Just like you're not saying this bread is good quality because it's made out of wheat. There's a whole lot more that goes into the process of making bread than just wheat. Whilst when you consider the second definition, quality as a characteristic, there's a lot more to talk about because a fabric can have many more different qualities that can fit to your preferences and expectations or not. And expectations is where the line often goes a little bit wrong. fact or faux? Cotton clothing can last you a lifetime. Well, who's gonna tell her? If you ever go vintage shopping, you might realize it's a lot easier to find polyester clothing from the 70s and 80s than it is to, for example, find a cotton dress like hers. And that has nothing to do with cotton clothing not being made in this era. Cotton is a cellulose fiber.
Many natural polymers, such as starch, cellulose and chitin, degrade quickly because bacteria and other microorganisms feed from them, transform them and return them to the natural cycle. Polyethylene, on the other hand, is an artificial polymer with a structure that is highly resistant, and this means that it can take decades to degrade.
You likely heard it before. Plastic hardly degrades.
It can last for hundreds of years in some instances.
So fabrics made of this material are a lot more resistant to wear and tear than your average cotton fabric. So when polyester was introduced, it was advertised as a fabric that had a much longer lifespan, maintaining its shape and color over time, much better than the traditional natural fibers on the market. Technically, this clothing should last you a lot longer. So why is there a growing group of people online who seem to think the opposite is true?
There is a growing feeling that clothes today suck.
Seeing a lot of like loose threads on things and a lot of stuff that's just made out of 100% synthetic fabrics.
You can see that the edges are completely unfinished and the stitching is so loose. This is literally coming apart.
The short answer being, a lot of the issues that people experience with the durability of their clothing doesn't have to do with the choice of the synthetic materials, but rather with the construction of the clothing. I'm going on quite a tangent here on different reasons why our clothing quality declined outside of just the fabrics. There are timestamps, just so you know. Not even that long ago, the purchase of clothing was driven by necessity and long-term use. But the industry went from tailoring to ready-to-wear to fast fashion to ultra-fast fashion and now real-time fashion. Oh, I can't keep up. Where it used to take 6 to 12 months to go from a design on paper to a piece of clothing you can actually buy in store.
They had to think of hundreds of unique designs and whittle them down to the dozen or so best ones.
Send the designs to the factory, go back and forth with them for months to create a prototype, choose the best fabric, write embellishments, and figure out the proportions for different sizes.
This whole process now has been reduced to just a few days. On top of that, we live in a world where everything is getting more and more expensive.
I started using the word the groceries.
No, it's not just the eggs and the groceries, but also labor, energy, and raw materials. And still, the majority of our clothing has gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. But it's not just the ultra fast fashion giants, guys. You could argue that many brands have fast fashionized their business model.
Because very cheap brands are rocketing up in value and older legacy brands are a little stagnated. Big box popular brands are trying to lower their prices so they can increase their growth. Look at vintage J. Crew ads from the 90s to see what their prices would be adjusted for inflation, and surprise, modern day J. Crew is cheaper than vintage J. Crew.
If you adjust for inflation, this $160 suit would cost $600 today. If you go to JCPenney now, you can easily get a two-piece suit for under $200.
How in the hell is that possible, you might wonder? Well, part of the cost can be cut by using cheaper synthetic materials like polyester instead of cotton, but you can imagine this can only get you so far. These materials haven't really gotten much cheaper over time. Additionally, the materials make only up about 12% of the cost of a garment. Thank God, there are lots of other areas where we can save some money. When making clothing that quick and that cheap, can imagine shortcuts have to be taken.
But I was a little bit let down by the lack of structure. Usually it will have some sort of felt here to give that structure.
And every step is extremely rushed. From product development like design and pattern drawing to the actual garment making in the factories, where workers are often paid per piece they sew instead of a fair hourly wage. Encouraging further, you feel it coming, rushing.
And it still was 100 francs. I mean, hello, it's just sticking out everywhere. There's threads coming out everywhere.
If you're watching this video, you might have heard of the term planned obsolescence. This is when manufacturers design products to have a limited lifespan so that consumers have to replace them sooner than necessary. Is it fair? How about... Oh hell no! Take the iPhone, that after a few years they purposely start to make slower each time you do a software update. What about the glass screen? We all know glass don't last. Fashion equivalent would be stockings. When they first came on the market in the late 30s, they were made of a really strong nylon and could last many months, until they realized a lot more money could be made if they would make them super fragile. So clever. However, nowadays clothing breaking isn't really the main reason why people are buying new stuff.
You better fix my entire life, you little shit.
And personally, I believe the reduced quality has a lot more to do with the system and business model changes that we spoke of before, and not brands purposely trying to reduce the lifespan of the clothing. Because, well, nowadays they don't really have to. Planned obsolescence can also mean perceived obsolescence. Constantly new products are pushed to make the older products seem outdated.
Do you feel amazing? You will if you put this on.
Yeah, kind of. The premise what the whole fashion industry is based on, constantly trying to gaslight us that you have to keep up with the trends to be fashionable, worthy and live your best life. Another not to underestimate issue with the longevity of clothing might be, take a guess, you! Yes, you hear that right. Are you still treating your clothes with respect, dignity and love? Do we wash it carefully, wear it carefully, repair it? Now that everything has gotten so fast and so cheap, what really happened with the perceived value of clothing? It's an interesting question to ask yourself. If you'd have a $100 t-shirt and a $10 t-shirt, are you treating them with the exact same love and care? Because my theory is most people don't. Anyway, to summarize, the quality and longevity of clothing, as opposed to how it's often portrayed on social media, is influenced by many more factors than just the materials, which is absolutely not to say that the choice of materials doesn't influence the longevity of clothing. For example, a real leather coat, material-wise, is likely to last much longer than a fake leather coat, as the last one is notorious for peeling after a while, which fake leather is not only polyester by the way, but usually has a layer of polyurethane on top of it. However, we can't generalize this to synthetic textiles being less durable. Let's say you had two of the exact same shirts with the exact same construction. One made of cotton and the other one of polyester. The polyester shirt generally should last you much longer, whereas keeping the average cotton garment in good condition for the rest of your life is just not very realistic. So durability wise, polyester is a clear winner. Moreover, the polyester shirt will maintain its color and shape better, wrinkle less, which means less ironing, stains are easier to remove, and it will dry faster. We could get at these qualities under a second point called maintenance. Polyester clothing generally is just a little easier to care for and maintain, so also here polyester wins.
Polyester has quite a bad reputation for being sweaty or not being that comfortable.
Since polyester mixes with your sweat, you will also start smelling insanely fast after like 2 minutes of wearing something with this fabric.
Fact or faux? Does it really make you smell like hell? You can imagine the molecular structure of polyester is very different than that of cotton. Cotton absorbs water and polyester repels it. On the other hand, polyester absorbs oils and cotton is an oil repellent. Polyester is more isolated by its nature, trapping body heat much better than cotton, which is why a fleece vest is made of polyester. However, in certain fabrics could lead to sweat staying longer on your body, and the oil attracting properties might trap skin oil into the fabric, which is what bacteria feed on, where cotton by its nature is a much more breathable fabric, which is why most people would rather wear a cotton shirt on a hot summer day. Well, guess the gyms must be looking like this now. It must be unbearable to still go, because almost all activewear is made of polyester. And after exactly 120 seconds...
2 minutes.
First of all, ew. Second of all, ew.
You found it coming, but yes, it's a little more nuanced than
Times
that.
have changed, polyester fabrics have been evolving, and now it's often used in sportswear.
Over time, many polyester fabrics have become much more advanced, with improved knitting and weaving techniques, using its moisture-repelling properties to create moisture-wicking fabrics that pull away sweat from the body and dry quicker than cotton clothing. Also in sportswear, antimicrobial finishes are used, like silver-treated polyester, and together with its easy maintenance and long lifespan, it starts to make sense that it's many people's choice of fabric to work out in. However, we can't deny that especially in the cheaper price range and in the non-performance fabrics, polyester sometimes still can be definitely clingy, sweaty and stinky. Which leads us to a somewhat seemingly paradoxical conclusion, because if we have to generalize, breathability-wise, cotton is a safe bet, because it's naturally breathable, and polyester, it depends really on how it's manufactured. However, for sportswear, polyester is usually preferable over cotton, as it's moisture wicking and keeps you drier. Making a generalizing statement that polyester will make you smell after 2 minutes is very oversimplified and not really a fact.
You know, you can't polish a turd, you know, like calling it high grade polyester doesn't make it better than it is. We don't do this for any other fabric, and that's what stands out to me, I think, about it. Wool is wool. You know, you don't say high grade wool. Wool is high grade. You don't say high grade silk because silk is great.
If you watch the video up till here, you probably realize already that none of what she's saying is very factual. In fact, I found this third polish online. On top of that, actually, for a lot of materials, there are official quality grading systems, where the quality is graded based on various different properties. For example, not all cotton is created equal.
While the bale slides into a protective plastic bag, the grippers deposit the sample into a bin. Technicians label the bale with an ID number, then open the bin to retrieve the corresponding sample. Then the sample is bagged and labeled with the bale ID number. The factory submits the sample to the United States Department of Agriculture, where it's analyzed for fiber length, cleanliness, color, and other criteria. Once the analysis is complete, the bale is given a grade and processed accordingly.
An example of a classification is Egyptian cotton, which is a high quality fine cotton with extra long fibers. The longer the fibers, the higher the fabric quality will be, because it will create a fabric that's more durable, softer to the touch as less of the fiber ends are sticking out, and less pilling will occur over time.
In Egypt, workers pick the highest quality cotton by hand. It's slower than harvesting by machine, but the Cotton Egypt Association says hand picking keeps the fibers intact.
However, once again, capitalism is not disappointing us, as it's estimated that about 90% of the products labeled Egyptian cotton aren't actually Egyptian cotton at all.
Surprise, surprise.
And although for polyester there aren't really official systems in place, the properties can still be evaluated, like its moisture wicking ability, stretch and recovery, pilling resistance, or finishing treatments, like water resistance, UV protection, or antibacterial function. I would be the last one to claim that everything that's more expensive is automatically better quality. However, if you would pay a couple of $1,000 for a polyester designer dress, it's gonna be very likely they're using a higher grade of polyester. It's not gonna be as clingy, static and sweaty, which might happen with a very cheap dress. Just like when you buy a cotton shirt from Primark, it's very unlikely it's gonna be the exact same quality of fabric as a cotton shirt from a premium brand. Which I'm not suggesting, by the way, you have to pay thousands of euros for a high quality polyester garment. It was just to make a point. The reality is, it's not always that polyester is chosen by companies to only cut the cost. It can also be because of its unique properties. And then we didn't even talk about its thermo-plasticity yet, meaning its shape can be altered by applying heat. Amazing for some low maintenance pleated skirts or the somewhat controversial popcorn shirts that yours truly tried to DIY once upon a time.
So the sea of cotton in front of us, both of us have to spray about all this today. These guys turned in about 5,400 acres. It rained a lot, and they can't get in with their ground rig to spray it. So we're going to get to spray it.
The only thing we should be wearing as humans are purely natural materials. Wool, linen, silk, cotton. Cotton right now is a little bit borderline because cotton is heavily herbicided and pesticided when they grow it, and they use a lot of chemicals to process cotton too. A lot of chemicals are used to dye the material.
I think the environmental impact is something you can make a whole YouTube channel about alone, because it's a huge and complex topic.
Cotton is often presented as a sustainable alternative for polyester. But is it? Well, cotton is one of the most pesticide-heavy crops in the world. Conventional cotton farming heavily relies on pesticides, including insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, and fertilizers.
To maximize your yield, you gotta minimize your infestation of weeds.
These are often sprayed with airplanes, and although this is quick and efficient, it's not very precise. Pesticides used in cotton farming are increasingly linked to reduced biodiversity.
You change the whole environment. You don't hear no birds singing, any insect, nothing.
And severe health risks.
Mr. Johnson discovered a lesion on his knee. It starts spreading and spreading, and you can see by October 2014, it was covering his whole body. He calls Monsanto. He's just looking for answers. No one called him back.
Behind these chemicals is hiding a dark world of powerful conglomerates, like Monsanto being one of them, that spend millions each year lobbying at the highest levels of our government against regulations to protect our health and environment, blocking independent research and trying to keep these toxic products on the shelves to make as much money as possible.
We knew that it caused cancer, but we didn't know that Monsanto knew.
And they have known for a long time, even going so far to hire their own scientists to debunk the actual signs, which have not always been that convincing.
Glyphosate in Argentina is causing increases in cancer. You can drink a whole quart of it and it won't hurt you.
You want to drink some? We have some here.
I'd be happy to, actually, but not really, but...
Not really?
I know it wouldn't hurt me.
If you say so, I have some glyphosate.
No, I'm not stupid.
Wow.
Most at risk are the people working on the fields and living in the surroundings, as well as the people in the factories handling the cotton and the textiles long term. So yes, that's a fact. Cotton is heavily pesticided.
Don't panic, it's organic.
Organic cotton farming does not use any synthetic pesticides or fertilizers and no genetically modified crops. More natural alternatives are used, like crop rotation and composting.
Since I've gone organic, I've been able to triple my profits and cut my labor costs. The pesticide sellers were making us buy products that we didn't even need. Chemicals would get inside our noses and eyes. We had health issues, and some people even died from that.
And just use organic, we don't have to panic. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. In fact, the topic can get pretty dang confusing pretty dang quickly, because organic doesn't necessarily mean sustainable or ethical, and sustainable doesn't mean organic. And the more confused the consumer, this offers a whole lot of opportunity for more greenwashing, in my humble observation.
I dress for love for life, and love for today.
If you think love will save our planet too, H&M does have some great products for you. Can I have a bucket? But what I thought was eye-opening is this statement on their website, reading:
Organic cotton accounts for less than 1% of all the cotton produced in the world. We buy more than that. Wait a minute!
So the entire world's supply isn't even enough for one business. Shoo. And it doesn't come without its own problems. Certifications are in place to give some clarity on this topic. However, they might not always mean what you think they mean. Certain certifications are applied when the raw, unprocessed cotton is organic. Everything that happens with it afterward is left out of the equation, so it can still be processed with harmful and environmental detrimental substances, like synthetic dyes that can contain heavy metals and other toxic finishing treatments.
A lot of countries don't have regulations around dye safety and dumping, so all of the dye water goes directly into water systems.
These kind of chemicals, they don't break down and they travel around the world,
harming the plants, animals, and people that use the water. Some rivers are completely dead.
And they use a lot of chemicals to process cotton too.
Other certifications turn that around, like the Ecotech Standard 100 only test for harmful substances in the end product, but it doesn't mean the cotton is organic or sustainably farmed, although many brands insinuate this, and many of these same certifications do not take into consideration the working conditions in the factories and so on. And an honorable mention goes to Better Cotton, used by thousands of companies like H&M, Levi's, Gap, etc., which isn't really organic, and it's also not really a certification. Well, what's better about it, you may wonder? Well, that's a great question, because their cotton has been linked to deforestation and forced labor, allegedly.
Both Zara and H&M claim to invest in sustainability and traceability, but a new report by Earthsight has linked the cotton in their products to illegal deforestation, land grabbing, and human rights violations.
Now, over the past few years, more than 1 million Uyghurs are thought to have been detained in so-called re-education camps. China denies claims of torture and carrying out forced sterilizations and abortions.
Also, they're using a mass balance system, which means they're mixing the so-called sustainable with the unsustainable cotton. In other words, the shirt you buy might contain 0% sustainable cotton. Yeah.
It is so bad, I want to give you a 0.
Why cotton? Firstly, and most importantly, it's comfortable, a natural fabric that supports farmers and communities.
Well, you might, but you might also support modern slavery, workers getting sick, and violence against local communities. Much better than Better Cotton is the GOTS certification, as at least 70% of the fabric has to be sustainable. And they basically look at the entire chain to improve working conditions and environmental impact from plant to garment.
The biggest challenge for India now is to enforce stringent measures for organic certification, as several companies with fake certificates were exposed recently.
We can't go into it all, but it's important to also know that cotton farming uses a lot of water, which combined with climate change is getting increasingly problematic.
Take a look at the Aral Sea in Central Asia. The region around it is a major cotton producer, and the diversion of 2 rivers flowing into it for irrigation has caused it to almost disappear.
And what about recycling cotton? Well, with what we talked about so far in this video, we actually already uncovered the main reasons why it just doesn't work. During wearing and washing, the fibers already degrade, let alone when it goes into the shredder, which is what happens in most recycling facilities. Can usually only process 100% cotton clothing, which is just a fraction of all the clothing. And even then, the fibers that come out are of such low quality that to turn it into a high quality fabric again, they have to add 70 but more often 80 to 90% of new virgin cotton. And the resulting fabrics cannot really be recycled in this way again. Newer technologies are more efficient, using enzymes to break the cotton down completely, which can then be built up again into long high quality fibers. But depressingly, real life large scale implementation is literally moving at a snail's pace, and these innovative recycling startups are even struggling to survive, as making these recycled fabrics currently costs more. And we already discussed it. We're not living exactly in a world where people want to really pay more for clothing, let alone companies want to make less money. Then we didn't talk about the impact of polyester yet. It's been a hot topic for a while, but plastic is not that fantastic, as you might have heard somewhere.
Microplastics.
Microplastics are everywhere.
They've been found in almost every organ in the body.
The first plastic soda bottle was introduced by Coca-Cola and Monsanto, the chemical company, in the early 70s.
Excuse me? Monsanto? Are you kidding me? Yes, it's that Monsanto, our friend from the pesticides. Has been instrumental in making consumer plastic, including polyester, into the disaster it has become today. But let's start at the beginning, because even before plastic is plastic, its environmental impact is already huge. Oil has to be drilled somewhere, disrupting ecosystems and leading to water contamination and the loss of biodiversity. Then there are the oil spill disasters, like here in the Gulf of Mexico, 2010, where oil has been leaking into the sea for many months, and the consequences to the environment are still ongoing. The production uses a lot less water than cotton, but it's thought to often be more energy intensive, as the plastic has to be heated multiple times. And even in the production, harmful microplastics and many other toxic compounds are released, not only from the plastic, but again from the chemicals used for dyeing and finishing. Or as Technical Textiles Today puts it, with each brushstroke of vibrant pigment, the dyeing industry cruelly splatters Mother Earth's delicate tapestry, leaving behind an indelible stain of ecological agony. Wow, I could not have put that better myself. But in other words, everything is dying from the dying. Wow, that does not hit as poetic. It's actually devastating. Researchers comparing the health effects to asbestos, a very toxic compound that has been banned in many countries for a very long time. Not only forming a high risk for the factory workers, these chemicals end up in the wastewater, polluting the wide environment and traveling around the world. But wait, there is more. And this is a big one. Or a small one, just how you want to look at it. Lots of microplastics are shedding during washing, and what sometimes people forget is also whilst wearing polyester clothing. It's estimated that at least 1/3 of the microplastic pollution comes from synthetic textiles like polyester. It's already detrimental to the environment and human health. And the unsettling reality is, even if today we would stop the entire plastic industry, which is not gonna happen, the pollution and therefore also likely the microplastics in our tissues are gonna accumulate exponentially, as all the plastic pollution we have now will break down and produce more and more microplastics for decades to come. Let me know if I should do a whole video on this topic, but it's way too complex and too much to put it all in this video. But as the purpose of this video was to point out some lesser known facts about these textiles, you might be surprised that research suggests indoor microplastic air pollution is actually worse than outdoors, as in for your personal health. And a big contributor to this is the synthetic textiles we have in our homes and we're wearing.
I don't think this is talked about enough. You can imagine the people working in clothing manufacturing breathing this air all day, every day. But also for me, myself, as a sewist and a designer, in my atelier, that is also my home office, that is also my bedroom and my living room and my kitchen and whatnot.
So if you're a sewist or upcycler like me, working with plenty of fabric indoors, you might want to take that into account.
In a new report called The Fraud of Plastic Recycling, it accuses the plastics industry of a decades-long campaign to mislead the public about the viability of plastic recycling, despite knowing the technical and economic limitations that make plastics unrecyclable.
Polyester clothing is extremely hard to recycle, which is why it barely happens in the industry, as it's often mixed with other fibers, and all the chemical finishes and dyes make it nearly impossible to implement this on a larger scale. So instead they're using our PET bottles, which is not so PET beautiful. This is actually called downcycling, and it's not a closed loop because the recycled polyester garments are of reduced quality, making them even shed more microplastics than virgin polyester clothes, and the recycled clothing can really not be recycled again, making them all end up in waste, where bottles can be at least recycled into bottles a couple of times. And the recycling process is still quite energy intensive. Yes, plastic waste is reduced, but to market it as an environmentally friendly product is just quite dishonest in my opinion.
In 1994, an Exxon executive told the staff of the Plastics Council that when it comes to recycling, we are committed to the activities, but not committed to the results.
They always kind of viewed recycling not as a real technical problem that they needed to solve, but as a public relations problem.
And it's not just the plastic industry. In my opinion, history repeats in the clothing industry. They know damn well up there that recycling is not gonna solve the massive problems of overconsumption that we're facing. But the more people buy into it, the longer they can keep selling their clothes. So, environmentally wise, who wins, polyester or cotton? Well, although 9 out of 10 people will probably tell you very convincingly it's cotton, I'd argue the answer is definitely not that straightforward. Researchers point out it's very hard to compare two entire fiber groups to each other. And even within the same fiber group, the differences can be huge. For example, polyester made in one factory might have a totally different ecological footprint than polyester made in the factory next door. Many videos will bombard you with statistics, but of course these are averages. If these numbers are already even correct, ultimately as a consumer you actually have no idea what the ecological footprint is of what you're buying. So experts point out that rather than focusing on polyester versus cotton, it makes a lot more sense to focus on the use phase of the garment, as here you actually have a lot of controls. Can make up to 40% of the ecological footprint. Let's say you buy a shirt of polyester, you never have to iron it because it doesn't wrinkle, you don't have to use bleaching agents, you wash it on cold because it doesn't really stain, and you don't regularly smash it with a baseball bat. No idea why she's doing that, I certainly wouldn't recommend it. And maybe you're even using a guppy bag, catch microplastics out of the washing machine, and you manage to wear it for 20 years. You can imagine this is gonna be a lot more environmentally friendly than if in these 20 years you have to buy 5 cotton shirts that you're washing on high heat, use harsher detergents, because cotton gets more discolored after a while, and then you're calling with your mom for 3 hours and you forget your washing machine is still going and going and going. Turns out you're completely overloaded. Oops. You have to buy a new washing machine. Not so great for the environment, to make a long story short. So it very much depends what you do with it. Did I make that clear? Okay. Or maybe the answer is somewhere in the middle. And we should wear more mixed fibers like polyester cotton blends to combine the best of both worlds, which is gonna be a topic for another video, I guess. But because I'm not the faintest, if I had to choose, cotton still gets the benefit of the doubt, but after all my research, I'm not even sure anymore. So all points considered, the winner is... There is no winner! That was clearly not the point of the video. I hope I give you some interesting insights and conveyed successfully that there is nuance. And textiles are a very complex topic, so there aren't really simple solutions, even though TikTokers might want you to believe otherwise. At the end of the day, there's always a product or a lifestyle to sell, so it's good to stay critical and do your research outside of these platforms. Let me know, what are you wearing right now? I don't mean that, you know. I mean that in the least pervy way possible. Just are you wearing cotton, polyester, any other fabric, doesn't matter to you. You have to check the labels or where you are aware of what fabrics you are wearing. Check out my upcycling tutorials, subscribe for fashion. Let me know if this was interesting to you by liking the video. Thank you to my Patreons and I hope to see you in my next one.